Hello, everyone, and welcome from the family of Akshaya Patra and Sandeep Talwar. Last 6 years in the organization as a Chief Marketing Officer has been very fulfilling. And today, as we observe the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste 2020, Akshaya Patra hosts this discussion on fighting food waste to support zero hunger. We have an elite panel with us today who are all experts in their fields, and I'm grateful for the time and efforts they are taking out of their schedules to share the knowledge. Before I hand over proceedings to our eminent moderator, Ms. Sheela Krishnaswamy, I would like to give you a brief introduction to the Akshaya Patra Foundation. In collaboration with 13 states and central government, we operate the world's largest free school meal program in India, serving 1.8 million meals every school day before the COVID breakdown. At Akshaya Patra, our vision states that no child in India should be deprived of education because of hunger. With the spread of coronavirus in our country, the foundation turned its resources towards food relief efforts, having served over 84 million meals since March 25th of this year. We also continue to focus on the nutrition and education of our beneficiary children who, without help through the pandemic, they suffer from malnutrition. This is why understanding the relevance of food waste has now become critical. Because, as you will hear today, hunger isn't about a lack of food. The world produces enough food to nourish every man, woman, and child on the planet. But nearly one-third of all food produced each year squanders spoiled before it can be consumed. On that note, allow me to hand over to Ms. Sheela Krishnaswamy, our moderator of the evening, who will introduce our eminent panel of experts. Over to you, Sheela.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. It's a pleasure to be here on the Akshaya Patra platform because we all know the wonderful work that Akshaya Patra Foundation is doing. Welcome viewers to the webinar on fighting food waste to support zero hunger. Let me begin by introducing the speakers. We have with us Captain Manivannan P., Secretary to Government of Karnataka, Animal Husbandry and Fisheries Department, who is an officer belonging to 1998 batch of the Indian Administrative Service. He is an engineering graduate from NIT Tiruchirappalli. His previous assignments have been with various departments of the government, including Land Revenue, Finance Revenue, Department of Information, and Public Relations. A few accolades that he has received are Namma Bengaluru Bangalorean of the Year Award in 2012, and he was selected as Young Leader of the Year by Times of India. In 2011, by a jury comprising of Sri Narayan Murthy and commissioned in Territorial Army in 2014, he continued to serve as the only IAS officer in the fighting arm of the Indian Army. Welcome to Captain Manivannan. He will be joining us just a few minutes later. Ms. Elizabeth Evancho is the Director of Grants at Share Our Strength. She leads the development and execution of grant strategies, policies, and procedures to align the grants portfolio with the organization's vision of ending childhood hunger, investing over $50 million in 2020 across all 50 states and internationally. Prior to this position, Elizabeth managed Share Our Strength's Cooking Matters, nutrition education program, and corporate and foundations relations, and led local hunger strategies in Washington, D.C. through heading development efforts at Thrive DC and sitting on the board of directors of a local farmers market. Share Strength's mission is to end hunger and poverty in the US and abroad through campaigns such as No Kid Hungry, which will end childhood hunger in the United States, and Cooking Matters, which helps low income families learn to shop and cook healthier. The organization believes that everyone has the strength to share and is helping launch and improve programs that give all kids the healthy food they need to thrive. Dr. Seema Puri has over 35 years of teaching and research experience. She has been conferred Distinguished Services Award by Geriatric Society of India in 2010 and for her significant contribution to nutrition and dietetics in 2014. Her research interests include infant and young child nutrition, NCDs, that is the non-communicable diseases, and geriatric nutrition. She has presented her work at several national and international conferences and has over 60 publications in peer-reviewed journals and books. She is a co-author of a popular textbook on nutrition and dietetics. Dr. Puri has also undertaken consultancy assignments for the UN World Food Programme, WHO, UNICEF, NACO, etc. She was temporary advisor to WHO for development of food-based dietary guidelines. She has been on DST and ICMR project review groups and task forces. She is also a member of the FSSAI scientific panels on labeling, claims, and advertisements, and on nutraceuticals and dietetic products. She is the Vice Chief Editor, Asian Journal of Dietetics, and Associate Editor, International Journal of Home Economics. Was the National Vice President of the Indian Dietetic Association, and she is presently the Executive Council member of the Nutrition Society of India and a member of several academic bodies, Indian Academy of Geriatrics, South Asian Infant Feeding Research Network, and International Federation for Home Economics. Welcome to both Elizabeth and Seema. It's lovely to have you with us today. Friends, September is celebrated as the National Nutrition Month in India, and 29th September is observed as International Day on Awareness on Food Loss and Waste Reduction. This, I think, is a very important step because it's a call to increase efforts towards food loss and food wastage so that everybody on this planet, especially those who are malnourished, has more than just a morsel to eat. If we reduce food wastage, we can definitely reach the goal of zero hunger faster. May I have the slides on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, please? Captain Manivannan has logged in. Welcome to you, sir. It's great to have you on the program. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, two of them, the foundation aims at achieving the most critical UN Sustainable Development Goals, zero hunger and quality education. And these two are by 2030, end hunger and ensure access by all people in vulnerable situations, the poor, including infants, to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food all year round. The second one says by 2030, end all forms of malnutrition, including achieving by 2025 the internationally agreed targets on stunting and wasting in children under 5 years of age. Address the nutritional needs of adolescent girls, pregnant, lactating women, and the elderly. So it's wonderful to know that Akshaya Patra is using these UN SDGs to try and combat malnutrition and try and reduce hunger to the extent possible. According to ILO, in India, the number of workers in the informal economy affected by the lockdown due to COVID-19 is huge. About 400 million workers in the informal economy are at the risk of falling deeper into poverty during this crisis. And in the Human Development Index, India is at 129 and falls in the medium human development category with a score of, excuse me, with a score of 0.647. With this background, I'm going to ask our esteemed panel members some questions. Seema, let me begin with you. Where do you think the problem lies as far as hunger and malnutrition go? And what is the impact of malnourishment as an obstacle for education in India?
Thank you, Sheela. As you just said, that the SDG 2, the goal is zero hunger. And the aim is to end all forms of hunger and malnutrition by 2030. In India, we have had very strong programs to alleviate hunger and malnutrition, especially in children, like the ICDS program, for more than 45 years now. And yet we have a very high prevalence of malnutrition. And under 5 years old age group, if you take, the stunting prevalence today is about 34.7%. The underweight prevalence is 33.4%. And anemia prevalence is 40.6%. So it really is a cause of concern. The situation actually is that we are a food secure nation. We have plenty of food grains. So there's data to show that the productivity of wheat and rice has gone up even from 2015 to 2019. It has increased tremendously, nearly a 30% increase. So we have plenty of food, but the problem becomes of the unequal distribution. So we are a food secure nation, but a nutrition insecure nation. And that's a problem because there's an inequitable distribution of food, inequitable distribution of the finances or the economics to get that food and the accessibility. So that's the situation as it is. And as you mentioned, the lack of food, in fact, the SDI index, impact index, which has been developed by Niti Aayog, has shown that in India, only about 5 states or union territories have met the SDG goals, and they're on the right track. I wouldn't say they've met them, but they're on the right track to achieve targets. And otherwise, we'll be much, much behind in the target. Now, besides the implications of malnutrition on growth and development, there's a very strong implication on education. And the most evident one is that children don't go to school because of the fact that they're malnourished, they are deprived, they are too weak, they are ill, there's frequent infections. So the school dropout rates are large. It also so happens that with many children in the family, the elder child is restrained from going to school to look after the younger child who is unwell or who is malnourished. And this kind of a situation has now become aggravated by COVID because of the fact that there's been a lot of reverse migration. People have gone back to their traditional villages. They've opted out of schools. They're not getting the midday meal, so they're getting malnourished. So the situation has worsened in this time. And I really don't know how we'll be able to achieve the goals. And of course, in long term, we do know that iron deficiency, anemia, and energy deficiency and all do affect school performance, both mental and physical cognitive abilities of the students. So there is a long-term implication on the child in terms of education also.
Thank you, Seema. Let's move on to Captain Manivannan. So what do you think is the impact of childhood hunger on a generation? What is the progress made by India to achieve the UN SDG of zero hunger? Can you share your thoughts, please?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I would, first the disclaimer, I am participating in my individual capacity and I do not represent any government, whether the central government or the state government of Karnataka.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, so I would like to spend some time on how the things happen in the government. something which you may not read in the public domain. That would be value addition to all of you here. So the first thing is the deprivation which you talk about, it actually starts when the women get pregnant. So the programs of the government so far have been concentrating on the children, but they miss the crucial phase of the child, that when the child grows in the womb. So I don't think any state in the country is having a universal coverage of nutrition for the pregnant mothers. Actually, they don't have it, and that has a huge impact, because the minute the child is born, and the government steps in to take care only after 1.5 or 2 years, and that's a huge, that gap, the first 1 year gap is not met by any formal government program. So this gap does the maximum damage. By the time the mental faculties and the most important part of growth happens at the time, and we catch up later, and this catching up actually doesn't happen substantially. So the gap impacts all through the life. So unless the government is able to bridge this, the programs what we have on malnutrition will not be able to solve the problem. As Ms. Seema Puri rightly pointed out, we will not be able to meet the SDG goals. That's the first part. The second part about the efforts made by the government. I mean, I'm working with the government for the last 20 years, but I will not be able to comment to why they did not do for last 70 years. But I can say that the initial attempts were made in the state of Tamil Nadu when they came with the midday meal scheme. So they thought of localized cooking and giving the food to the children, and this model stuck to people. I mean, nobody thought, do you know about, I have food surplus, like Seema said. You have a surplus of food grains, and I have to convert into a palatable food for children. What is the best methodology? In fact, it took almost 45 years since the first time in 1982, when the Tamil Nadu government went for universal scheme, for Akshaya Patra to step in and say that we are going to have a centralized kitchen, and then we are going to run this program effectively. So after Akshaya Patra came, then we have some more Nandi Foundation and all came into the picture. And I have seen how the two schemes have been operating parallel, cooking at the institute and cooking at the centralized place. The centralized kitchens are far, far better in delivering the proper food to the children, actually. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that if you are able to convert the entire country into the centralized model, we'll be able to jump at least some 20 to 30% more nutrient food to the children. So one might ask that when you have an example why it's not being done. There are different reasons. One is that when you involve children to cook food, what happens is that the quality is not same in all the schools, number one. Number two, there is a complaint of pilferage. So in a country like India, where there's a lot of shortage, it is very difficult to ensure that what you put in input exactly leads to the output children. So you are aware that there's a leakage, and because of reasons which are not in the book, so you are somehow running it actually. So when we try in Karnataka state to convert district after district into the centralized Akshaya Patra type of model, there was a lot of resistance for that. So the government has to, all the governments in the country have to somehow tackle this problem actually. It's getting, I would say that we're already losing the race. And how many more generations we are going to just allow this to happen actually? If you have a good scheme, let us adopt it. Let's ensure that the children do not get malnourished. As we see the education level in the government schools where you have the shortage of nutrients for the children, the gap is huge. The gap is currently, whatever from my knowledge in Karnataka, it's actually 4 years. I mean, a child which is able to get a good nutrient food is able to be ahead of the child in the government school by 4 years. So if the government school child is in the 10th standard in the government school, it actually has the knowledge of a 6th standard child in the private school. Actually, it's something which it should strike people so badly that you are not able to build capacity of the children. So I would say that the governments now should seriously come together, think of a better model, bring an enactment, and ensure that this malnutrition has to be tackled with the utmost sincerity, so that we, the systems available in the country are being copied everywhere uniformly. So this is what I want to share. And one last point is that when you do a centralized scheme, there is one byproduct too. The byproduct is that whenever there's a natural disaster, calamity, flood or earthquake, something like that, immediate requirement is to provide food. And that time, all the governments go for temporarily setting up kitchens. So they set up kitchens and they give food. So if you have a centralized kitchen, for example, in all the 700 districts of the country, then you actually sort of, calamity proofing also. Whenever a calamity hits, I'm having kitchen ready. Yeah, something happens today. Within 12 hours, I'll be able to get the food ready, be able to take care of people. So it works. I mean, it's an added advantage. So when you have so much of advantage, it's like, it's a surprise why we are not able to adapt the best method possible before us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Captain, for those interesting points. In fact, I like the point about centralized kitchens, and I think Akshaya Patra is already doing great work in that area. And in fact, they've proved that they can, they can face disasters even during the pandemic. They have done such good work, which probably will be talked about a little later. So let me move on to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, we see US as one of the world leaders for so many things. What is the current situation in the US as far as food waste, hunger, and malnutrition are concerned?
Great. Thank you so much to the Akshaya Patra Foundation for even inviting Share Our Strength to join this panel today. I'll say, even though I come sort of with a U.S. perspective, one of the things that we've so appreciated with our partnership with the Akshaya Patra Foundation over the last few years is this ability to really share and learn best practices from each other and be able to take the great things happening in India and implement them here and sort of vice versa, and sharing and learning. I think we've already sort of mentioned, coronavirus has really impacted the entire world by increasing hunger, poverty, unemployment. The World Food Program recently released a report that said acute hunger could double in 2020 versus 2019. And quite frankly, in the US, we're seeing similar trends. In a recent study that Share Our Strength released, we saw that up to 47% of people are actually at risk of experiencing hunger here in the US. And that includes 1 in 4 households with kids at risk of hunger. That number also has nearly doubled from what we saw pre-COVID-19. And so we know that at this point, kids are really at risk of hunger here. And so what Share Our Strength does, and I think, Seema, you put it so well, right, is that we can't expect kids to learn if they're hungry. And so Share Our Strength's mission has always really been to partner with schools and community organizations to ensure that kids have access to 3 healthy meals a day so that they can learn and thrive as well. So that's where we're working as schools are closed and sort of our traditional nutrition programs that kids are used to being in school for 8 hours a day. While that sort of in flux in the US, we're really looking for creative ways to continue to get meals to kids wherever they're at so that they have the nutrition they need to learn. Similar to India, right, we know that the issue isn't that there's not enough food, it's that we're not getting food to the people who need it most. And in that way, the connection between hunger and food waste is, especially relevant here in the US and really internationally as well.
Okay, that's actually, it's a bit scary to know that, countries all over the world are facing increasing hunger and malnourishment. And in spite of all of that, there's a lot of food waste happening. Thank you for that, Elizabeth. Let me move back to Captain now. So what are your concerns regarding malnutrition and hidden hunger?
The concern is that we are in the middle of the demographic dividend, where you have a lot of the younger population is quite high in India now. We should have started ensuring malnourishment is not there when we anticipated this demographic dividend 10-15 years back. because this is the population which is going to work and improve the economy, and this population is malnourished. So the mental faculty and the physical fitness both are wanting in this group. And what are we going to do with this? So my concern is that if we do not attend to this number one problem of the country, the malnutrition, then we are not going to go beyond a particular, I would say the trap. You will be doing mediocre value addition. Thereby, you'll be in a sort of a negative cycle wherein you are not able to compete with the rest of the world. In this increasingly flat world, your economy can develop only if you are able to find a market outside the country. Even though we can say that we are a big consumer, I don't think that any country in the current scenario will be able to become an economic superpower only by catering to the domestic demand. So when you talk about demand going beyond the country, also the niche segment in the country will be looking at a quality product. The quality product is not, and we are not able to bring it in such an extent in India. Very clear from the amount of imports we do. You talk about standard goods and items in India, most of them are still imported actually. So why it's happening? Because there is a lack of capacity, which we should acknowledge, and the lack of capacity, if we keep on going working backwards, will end up at malnutrition in childhood actually. So without attending to that issue, if you talk about that, I am going to bring some changes in the macroeconomic canvas. It is not going to help. Let's ensure that the child is brilliant and the child is able to. The child will be able to grow to. It's able to bloom into a complete personality who can compete with the rest of the world. So you have somebody who is brilliant sitting in Korea or in US or in Europe. You have a guy who is malnourished in India. How do you compete actually? I mean, can't you see it in the Olympics and in the Asiad actually? We are not able to get anything because in spite of having 1.3 billion population, we don't come anywhere. So it's like on the writing on the wall. I was astonished after some 5 or 6 years of my service in the government. I was shocked to realize that why this is not written and put on everybody's desk that look, malnutrition is the primary problem and what are you going to do about that today? This is a question that everybody in the government should be asking. Unfortunately, it is not happening. Because, I do not know. I mean, why it's not happening, I don't want to go into that. But it is sufficient to say that you cannot become a superpower. You cannot become, economically, a well-run country, or technologically, you can't advance anywhere, anyhow, unless you tackle this issue of malnutrition. And I must also add, there's one more issue with regard to tackling malnutrition, because you have the strange custom of caste system in India, which doesn't allow the communities to come together. For example, we started a community meal scheme in Gujarat and in in Himachal Pradesh, in Northeast. So it could not succeed actually, even though you have the richest guys in the same locality. It doesn't translate into feeding the poor children, because the community is sort of, it is like there's a lot of differentiation, a lot of divisions within the community. So unlike in US or in Europe, you don't have a complete community. There are divisions within us. So we have to work on two things. One is how to remove these barriers within the community, number one. And second is how to create efficient logistical models to deliver the food, like Akshaya Patra has done. So now we have partially solved the problem of logistics. We have a model before us, and to go for awareness, wherein you're able to break this imaginary walls we have created amongst in the community, thereby able to allow a free flow of the inputs from the surplus area to where there's a need.
Okay, that's interesting that you bring in the barriers, and how that is actually creating problems of malnutrition in the country. Yes, that is a very good point. Thank you for that, sir. And Elizabeth, I have a question for you. What are the initiatives or steps that US has taken towards zero hunger?
Yeah, great question. I think as it relates to food waste as well, what we see in the United States is that about 30 to 40% of the overall food supply is lost due to food waste throughout the process. And so Share Our Strength is, and the U.S. are really trying to tackle that at various stages, from reducing waste at the source. We're working with schools to reduce food waste and focus on childhood hunger, and then also reducing waste through client choice and advocating for government programs that could increase that choice and reduce hunger. Looking at sort of reducing waste at the source, we're focusing on really connecting farms directly to consumers and shortening that supply chain. When coronavirus first hit, what we saw was that supply chains to farms and their regular consumers were suddenly completely changed. Restaurants were no longer operating, and so most of the folks that they were selling to really weren't purchasing that food anymore, leaving a lot of farms with excess food. And so we partnered with a lot of organizations that were able then to work directly with farms to buy that produce in bulk at discounted rates to be able to get the food directly to consumers or the individuals who need it at most. We also often partner with schools to help with sort of farm to school programs and really making that connection directly between the schools who are feeding thousands of kids each day with the farmers right in their community to be able to increase the number of local whole foods, fruits and vegetables that are being served to the kids each day. So sort of shortening that supply chain really has been able to help directly connect the farms, the meal or the food production with the folks who need it most. Another strategy that we're using is working with schools to reduce food waste and ensure that kids are able to really have access to the meals that they need. Some strategies that we found particularly effective are extending meal times that kids are eating. So more time for kids to eat their meals before returning to class actually creates less food waste, giving kids time to actually consume that meal. Also know that engaging students in understanding what they want to eat, doing taste tests, helping them contribute to menu planning is also a way that really engages students and ensures that the food that we're serving them is actually something that they are excited about and are more likely to consume. And then another couple of strategies that we use with schools are also creating things like share tables or even saving food items. So when kids have whole food items that they didn't touch, but took anyway, we have tables that they can sort of put a whole apple on or a whole orange. And then other kids who maybe wanted seconds can go take that food as well. Similarly, kids could take one of those items home with them for later. And so they're not throwing those items in the trash. We're looking for ways in which we can actually make that food last longer and get it to the kids who need it most. And then finally, Share Our Strength is really advocating for policies at the national and state level to increase consumer choice. So for us in the U.S., we're advocating for policies like SNAP and electronic benefits transfer. So giving folks the money that they need to use directly at grocery stores and purchase food for their families. So we know that instead of giving folks a box of food that they might not know how to prepare or might not match the preferences of their family, we're instead advocating for a lot of programs that give families the funding that they need to make the food choices that are best for them and their family, which we know then will reduce waste in the long run, that they're only purchasing food that they're going to eat, and that really matches the preference of their family. So those are, I think, just a few ways that we're working to sort of tackle hunger and food waste hand in hand, and really seeing that these two issues are one and the same.
Okay, that's wonderful. So basically, you're targeting all segments in food and agriculture to ensure that you can fight the hunger and malnutrition. Wonderful to know that. Thank you, Elizabeth. Seema, now coming to you. How far do you think we are from achieving a zero hunger goal, and what is the involvement of the academia or industry in reaching this goal?
Like I said earlier, because of COVID, I think we are now even a little more backward than what we were earlier, but it seems to be difficult to achieve the zero hunger goal. And the SDI impact index, which the Niti Aayog has come up with, it shows that only 5 states or union territories in our country are on the right track to achieve it. So that seems like a little distant dream, and this was before pre-COVID. So things are not too bright. Of course, in the last, with the Poshan Abhiyan coming in the last few years, there's been an increased emphasis on nutrition, and therefore indicators have improved in the last 3 years. For example, like Captain said, that the pregnant mother, the young child, was a neglected area earlier. Even in ICDS, the focus was mainly on preschool children. But the restructuring of the ICDS and the Poshan Abhiyan has focused on the under 2. And they've also identified what they call aspirational districts, where hunger is maximum. And there's an additional focus, additional Anganwadi worker, home visits, additional focus on this under 2 age group, so that these children are caught right at the beginning and they can be given the right food and the right management of SAM and things like that. So that, of course, is there. But at the end of it, it boils also down to availability of food and accessibility, availability, affordability. And that starts right from the agricultural practices. So, when we talk to farmers, there's this big thing about their reluctance to grow vegetables because they are perishable. They don't have a market for them. Suppose they're not able to sell them for 2 days or 3 days, the green leafy vegetables perish. But if it's potatoes or if it's wheat or rice, they still get money for it. So I think that those are also policies which the government is looking at, and we need to really tackle that. They should be encouraged to grow nutritious food, and because if they grow, they will consume, and they'll also get some income out of it. And there, like you had mentioned initially, to talk about innovative approaches, there have been some innovative approaches in this field. I came across an NGO in Punjab, which was doing a barter system. So they had a kind of heart or a marketplace where all the farmers could get whatever, whether it was just 5 kilos of ladyfinger or 2 kilos of cauliflower or 10 kilos or whatever. And they had a minimum price they would give them. And they could exchange that for the same value of something else. So like if I grew cauliflower and you grew tomatoes, I could give up my cauliflower and buy tomatoes instead. So, encouraging the diet diversity, because that's what I said. We are mainly a cereal-based nation. We just, adequacy in cereal is there, but the other diversity in the diet is lacking. So we really need to look at those kind of strategies. I always say, you go to remote areas, a hill station, or something like the Rohtang Pass or the Himalayas, you will get, instant food, you will get biscuits. But the government machinery will collapse to say that we were not able to get our supplies there to feed in the Anganwadi. So the logistics, maybe a public-private partnership, maybe tying up with, like Akshaya Patra gives meals everywhere. But the problem is that the government machinery, for whatever reasons, is not able to really reach the unreached, and that's an issue also in our ability to achieve these targets.
Okay,
Yes,
those are some.
that's about it.
Yeah, those are some very interesting points, Seema, and I think the dietary diversity point is very, very relevant, and also encouraging the farmers to grow nutritious food and also for them to consume is, I think, also very important. Before we move on to the happiness video, let me take a quick round of comments. If you have any key takeaways, or if you would like to share any best practices, or Seema, you just mentioned about the Punjab example. if you have any closing thoughts, let me begin with Elizabeth. Do you have any, key takeaways or final comments?
Sure. Well, I think Share Our Strength was really founded on this idea that every person has a strength to share in the fight against hunger. And so I think some of the best practices really that align really well between the US and India is finding those unique voices and individuals and allowing them to support in the fight against hunger. A few examples of this really could be, engaging restaurants. We saw when COVID-19 hit that many restaurants had to close their doors, but still wanted to be able to bring staff in, be able to pay their staff, and to really feed people. And so what we were able to do was work with those folks to get funding from private sources and public sources to continue to make food and work with school districts. So they already had the sort of safety and production strategies in place. These restaurants could open their doors back up, continue making food, using their own food, and purchasing new food, and then finding the kids most in need through the districts and really donating those. So creating jobs and food supply in that way. We also know restaurants and chefs, and at least here in the US, have really strong voices to share. So within advocacy, they're able to help us promote the awareness of the issue of childhood hunger, and that goes really such a long way. Another area that we saw have real impact was partnering even with hospitals and healthcare centers, and partnering them with food banks and local restaurants for meals as well. And so hospitals, we know, especially with young kids, could identify who are the children most in need and who are the families that really needed the meals, and connecting them directly with food programs as well. So again, sort of unlikely, not somewhere that we usually look to end hunger, but really people from all over are stepping up, and doctors are experts in health and nutrition and engaging them in this conversation. And then finally, we look at youth engagement. And I know this is a huge sort of asset in India as well, is engaging youth and their ability and prowess over social media, and engaging that to raise awareness and the need for basically, letting people know that hunger is an issue and it is solvable. And there is enough food, we just have to make sure we're getting it to the people who need it most. At Share Our Strength, we have a youth ambassador program where we're taking college and college students, putting them directly in the field, working on hunger issues. And we also have platforms that make it really easy for young people to raise awareness and raise dollars for the issue of hunger in the US as well. So again, just sort of looking across the board, knowing that everyone has a strength to share, and really determining who can help in ending childhood hunger, and how can they do that, and making that really as easy as possible for folks.
Oh, thank you for those lovely thoughts. Let me ask Seema to share her takeaways, and
Well,
if you have something else to say beyond.
yes, I would just like to emphasize on three things. One is that I think what we need, the need of the hour, is a multi-pronged strategy. It's like not only midday meal, but then you have anemia control, like deworming tablets, you have education, you have, even vitamin D. Schools, we are advising them that during the interval, let the children stand in the sun for half an hour. So simple things like that will help. So multi-pronged strategy, reducing food waste is a very important thing. We are wasting so much food. The portion sizes are so huge. Children waste a lot of food on the plate. The social celebrations, unfortunately, due to COVID, they're all restricted, but there's so much food wasted at marriages and things like that we need to look at. And then, of course, the industry should be encouraged to innovate and come up with nutritious products. Most of their products are high fat, sugar, salt, which is, and they do have the science and they do have the wherewithal to do it. And as part of CSR, they can also then distribute them or subsidize them,
Okay, good point, Seema. Would you like to say anything else?
No, thanks. That's it, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. And Captain Manivannan, your takeaways and comments, sir?
I am very glad that other people in this webinar are also converging on the same idea of using the CSR. Thank you, Seema ma'am. And she also mentioned something more important about the vegetables in the food. I entirely concur with her. The midday meal scheme in India is basically cereal-based one, actually.
Yes.
So there's a huge gap on giving the vegetables. And when I'm putting everything together along with what Elizabeth said about funding, I am just emphasizing on this one point that it is not possible for a single system to cater to the varied needs of the children throughout such a big country. So we need a localized system. At the same time, the local system has to be robust and effective. So this can come from one single source. The single source is the private sector. The sense the private sector has the managerial and technological ability to do things properly. In fact, Akshaya Patra itself is a private initiative. So when Seema talks about multi-pronged strategy, I fully subscribe to that. The required funding, I mean funding in the sense the cereals and other things, what the government gives could be little increased. The government should trust the private sector and make it possible for them. Like they are supporting Akshaya Patra by giving the grains, you should be open to an industry or any private sector company. It is possible to earmark areas for each company. For example, they can say Infosys in Karnataka, in Bangalore, will take care of the entire Bangalore city. They will put their managerial and technological, ability, capacity there. They will ensure that purchase any required quantity of vegetables. They may do backward and forward integration, and they should be given the target of, okay, you have this area. Every child in this area should not be malnourished. That's your responsibility, and this is the contribution from my side, from the government side. Rest you please mobilize and do it. And if you're able to create a platform where this allocation of the areas, monitoring of the progress, and publishing the result can be done in a very, very professional manner, I think that would actually come close to solving the problem. Otherwise, I would agree with Seema that it is not going to be easy to solve this with the present current level of efforts you're putting, actually.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Very interesting indeed, and I'm glad the panel members are on the same page. Everybody is trying to move towards zero hunger and zero malnutrition, reduce malnutrition, zero hunger, and efforts are well appreciated. There are a few questions coming in from the audience. I encourage the viewers to post your questions so that we can answer them just a few minutes later. Let me just quickly sum up what we have heard till now for some of you who might have joined in a little late. So we started with the Captain Manivannan, who said that nutrition starts with pregnant moms. I think that was a very, very important point you made, sir. So right from conception to the last stage of our lives, nutrition becomes a very important tool, right? So in order to have, and if we have healthy children, obviously we're going to have healthy adults. So nutrition plays a very important role. And you also said centralized kitchens will help to cater to all the children, which can function much better rather than having small pockets of work going on. And Seema, you said we cannot expect to learn. We cannot expect children to learn if they are hungry, which is so true. And Elizabeth, you said there's a huge amount of hunger and malnutrition in the US as well. And later on, we moved to the second round where a captain said that we cannot become a superpower unless we tackle malnutrition. So basically, I think all of us are saying the same thing, or all of us are thinking the same thing, that malnutrition should be tackled first in order to progress, in order to have healthy children, in order to have healthy adults, and all of that. And Elizabeth, you said that targeting all segments of population and including all stakeholders to take this forward is what is important. And we also need to increase the focus on under 2 children to beat malnutrition. Seema, those were your words. So availability, accessibility, and affordability has to be looked into, and the farmers need to be encouraged to grow nutritious foods and also consume them. Dietary diversity is very
Talked about the malnutrition on the women, and we agree that it has to start from the lady and the woman. Any thoughts you have and best examples and learning you have around lactating mothers? Because Anganwadi plays a far more vital role in India. And what thoughts you have or some best practices you have on the lactating mother on
Yeah,
malnutrition?
thank you, Sandeep, for asking this question. I can only share what Karnataka is doing. Recently, 1 year back, they came with a scheme for providing nutritious food for the expecting mothers. So this has been, I would say, a sort of an initiative which has not been completely internalized. But yes, last 1 year is running, and the results have been good. They're able to give food to the expectant mothers, but they have to come to the Anganwadi and have food. So still, as you know, that out of 100%, you'll be able to get some 50-60%. There is definitely a chunk of women, expecting mothers, who are staying, in a mountainous, hilly region where they will not be able to come and take this food. So we have to think of, now you have excellent, tertiary services like, you have Flipkart and Amazon possibilities there to tie them up and see whether we are able to ensure the cooked food, because we have seen that uncooked food or semi-cooked food doesn't reach the poor as much as cooked food. I mean, Seema may correct me on that. So how do you ensure cooked food reaches them? When you can have it done in the cities with so many efficient, companies using it, can we do it in the rural area? That will be a challenge. Karnataka has started doing it at the Anganwadis. I hope that every state starts this at a pilot basis, because it will take a few years to stabilize this, but it is required.
okay.
Good to catch up with you. Maybe fine.
Yes, I would be happy to do that.
Okay, Sheela, allow me
Okay,
to
my
please go ahead.
apologies once again. Sorry, my apologies once again for the technical glitch. We have one interesting question from the audience. What is the panel's thoughts on engaging locality-based community to help in preventing food waste? Example, local grocer whose vegetables have not been sold, restaurant food excesses, etc. So perhaps each of you can give your thoughts on this. Would you like me to repeat?
No, it's
Seema,
fine.
can we start with you?
Okay. If you see the local vegetable seller, at least I've seen in Delhi, what they do is at the end of the day, they keep a basket in front of their cart or whatever, where they put all the spoiled vegetables or the ones which will get spoiled, and they are given free or at some discounted price, even like bananas or mangoes or whatever. The inferior qualities are sold at a cheaper price. So that is there. But yes, we would definitely need, something like the Robin Hood Army. There are organizations, certain NGOs, which you can inform them that you have a wedding and the food is left, so they come and pick it up. The problem that comes is that the food should not get spoiled, because if it is like warm weather in Delhi or humid weather, picking up the food and distributing it among the poor, and then you have an episode of food infection, it just reverses the purpose. So there has to be proper facility to ensure that the food which is given by restaurants also is edible and safe for the children to eat when it reaches them. So that's a very big issue which has deterred a lot of people from taking this up.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. But wherever possible, if the food, the spoilage of food can be controlled, perhaps it would be a good
Yes.
way to deal with it. Yeah. Thank you for that. Elizabeth, would you like to say something on this?
Sure. I think we run into similar challenges here in the U.S. as well, like you were saying, Seema, around food safety. The regulatory framework around food donations varies from state to state and at the local level as well, which oftentimes actually makes it really confusing for restaurants and caterers to be able to donate the prepared food. I think where we do see a lot of successes at that local level are gleaning programs. So with local farmers markets or local grocery stores or farms themselves, once they sort of pick the produce, we have a lot of community organizations who then go to the farm and pick any of the remaining produce to then donate to people in need. So I definitely think that those partnerships do exist out there, and so much can really be done and driven at the local level. So it's really a fantastic question.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Captain, so would you like to say anything?
Okay, so I have a different viewpoint in the sense cooking, I would strongly suggest shall be done only at one common kitchen, hygienic and sort of clear from any sort of any other type of accusation that will come actually. But we have found that when we cook from different places, small issue comes there, so it goes into a tailspin. So it's better to avoid that. And I am not for cooked food, which is, you are talking about waste. I would say that to avoid waste, before even cooking it, reduce the quantity actually. Or if at all it's cooked and we are not able to, if by chance it happens, then consume it locally. Do not send it to other persons because of two things. One is in India, we have some social issues with that. And second is, as somebody rightly pointed out, you don't know when it is actually being eaten, whether it is it's in the right, what do you call it, it is palatable or not, we don't know actually. That's why if you want to donate, if the community want to participate, I would say the community should participate, but it shall be in giving a non-cooked, uncooked grains to the common kitchen. That would be a good idea. Like, I have seen a very good example, again, comes from Karnataka. We have got religious mutts in Karnataka running schools, and I have seen farmers, when they do the harvesting, one bag of rice, they take it to the religious mutt and give it to them, saying that you are taking care of children, please, this is our contribution. So I am looking at some future point of time where Akshaya Patra or Nandi Foundation has a receiving point, and somebody comes and gives a grain saying this is my contribution.
Yeah. So basically, your community contribution, safe food, everything comes into play when when we are donating food to the others. I think right from raw to cooked food, whatever it may be. Thank you for your thoughts. The ration, the kit includes immunity enhancing ration kit, hygiene products, and an education kit, which is donated to several children, several needy families. So before we end, in the National Nutrition Month, my sincere appeal to all of you is to donate for a good cause. Whether it's at an individual level or an institutional level, it'll help to elevate the families and children towards better nutrition. So thank you once again to Akshaya Patra for giving me this opportunity to moderate the program. And I hand over the stage to Sandeep to close the meeting.
Thank you, Sheela. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. I would also like to thank our panel, Seema ji, Captain Manivannan, my good friend Elizabeth, for bringing their expertise and experience to the table and engaging in such fruitful, constructive, and open exchange. Truly acknowledge the support extended by Sheela ji. She is a good friend to many children in Akshaya Patra. She's been visiting locations, and we were trying to catch up before we start the meeting which all locations we met. Once again, thanks to all of you for joining us today. Wishing you all a blessed and a good evening. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It has been indeed a pleasure to spend time with you on such an important topic. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a good interaction.
Our pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.